Love is the first and most essential bond, but it's also the invisible thread, woven with time, attention, and tenderness through consistent nurturing relationships.
The palace had prepared the country for a royal announcement, but almost nobody expected the woman who appeared before the cameras. Princess Catherine stepped forward alone, looked directly into the lens, and delivered her first official state address with a composure that instantly changed the atmosphere around the monarchy. Yet it was not merely her presence that stunned viewers. It was the unmistakable message beneath her carefully chosen words. Her royal role had just entered an entirely different chapter. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine felt the weight before a single word was spoken. Moments earlier, she placed both hands flat against the desk, closed her eyes, and quietly told an aide, "I'm ready." The fear had not vanished. She decided it would not control her. Her state address, an official speech delivered on behalf of national royal duty, was unprecedented because she was speaking directly to Britain and the Commonwealth, without another senior royal beside her. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Catherine announced that she had accepted an expanded crown responsibility, meaning a formal duty carried on behalf of the monarchy, to represent continuity, national service, and selected senior engagements during a period of transition. She did not describe herself merely as William's support. She promised to serve the crown directly, wherever duty required her presence. And the distinction was impossible to miss. William heard those words from a private adjoining room, and pride collided with tension. When his wife reached the phrase, "the responsibility that this moment requires," the prince lowered his eyes. He knew what the public could not. Every new responsibility meant another surrender of privacy, another demand on family life, another expectation Catherine would have to absorb. Yet he also knew she had chosen those words knowingly, making his silence heavier. Charles shaped that meaning only hours earlier. The king approved the final wording and changed one phrase, replacing "supporting the institution" with "carrying responsibility for the institution." The institution, in plain terms, meant the monarchy itself, its duties, continuity, and public role. Those words moved Catherine from the language of assistance toward direct responsibility. Camilla understood the significance as clearly as William did. While the public heard reassurance, those closest to the crown heard a shift. The queen consort knew this was not simply Catherine speaking well, she was being trusted differently. The real shock was not that she had spoken, but that everyone closest to the crown already knew why she had been chosen to speak now. What had happened behind closed doors, before the world ever heard her historic voice. Behind Catherine's composed voice stood four people carrying four entirely different versions of the same moment. William saw the woman he loved stepping into history. Charles saw the future of the monarchy becoming visible before his eyes. Camilla saw the balance of attention shifting in a way impossible to ignore. And Catherine herself understood that once the address ended, she could never return to being viewed merely as the supportive royal figure standing one step behind. William had understood that danger even before the broadcast began. In the private conversation that came before Catherine took her place, he asked one simple question. Was she certain? She looked at him for a long moment before answering that certainty was impossible. But duty could not always wait for certainty. The prince did not argue. He simply reached for her hand. His hesitation had never been about whether she was capable. It came from knowing exactly what greater responsibility would cost them both. Catherine carried that knowledge with her. She remained William's closest personal partner. But something had clearly changed around her role. She was becoming an independent senior figure, whose decisions and words could carry weight beyond supporting her husband. That mattered because the monarchy's future depended not only on succession, meaning the order in which the crown eventually passes, but on whether the public trusted the people who would one day carry that responsibility. Charles had been thinking about that question for some time. In several private conversations, the king had spoken to Catherine about what he called visible continuity, the idea that the monarchy's future must become familiar to the public before any formal transition makes it unavoidable. He was no longer thinking only about William eventually inheriting the crown. He was thinking about whether the next royal generation could already make people feel secure. Camilla felt the shift from another direction entirely. When the finalized broadcast schedule reached her office, she noticed Catherine had been given the most prominent evening slot. She read the page once, then again. The queen consort finally set it down and asked, with almost unsettling calm, "Was this always the plan?" Nobody in the room rushed to answer, and that silence carried its own meaning. William still struggled with the speed of it all. He knew every new appearance would bring more scrutiny, more judgment, and less space for Catherine to simply be herself. Yet he also knew Charles had already begun trusting her with something deeper than ceremony. The future king could protect her from some pressures, but not from the importance now being placed on her. Catherine understood that too. What the public had witnessed in the address was not the beginning of the transformation. It was the moment the transformation became visible. The real beginning had come weeks earlier, during one uncomfortable royal engagement that nobody expected to matter so much. And when those closest to Catherine later searched for the exact moment everything changed, they kept returning to one encounter that had ended with Charles making a decision in silence. Every royal turning point has a moment that looks ordinary, until history gives it meaning. Catherine's address was no exception. Weeks before the cameras went live, one engagement placed her in a situation no carefully prepared briefing could control. There was no grand ceremony, no constitutional announcement, and no dramatic palace proclamation. There was simply a frightened family, an unexpected conversation, and King Charles watching Catherine respond in a way he would not forget. Catherine arrived at the National Remembrance reception, expecting only a brief series of greetings before joining the formal royal party. The reception brought together families carrying personal loss, while the wider event was designed to honor national service and sacrifice. That mattered because Charles had already been asking how much responsibility the younger generation should begin carrying whenever his own schedule had to be reduced. He was watching more closely than anyone realized. Then the timetable broke apart. A young widowed mother began speaking to Catherine about losing her husband, and the woman suddenly struggled to continue. The princess stopped moving. Instead of offering a quick word and passing on, she stayed beside her, ignored the quiet signals from aides, and let the conversation unfold at the mother's pace. Catherine did not rush her grief, and the woman slowly steadied. William saw the delay and felt concern before he felt pride. He knew how easily an unpredictable emotional moment could overwhelm his wife, or become something the public misunderstood. Yet as the prince watched Catherine keep the focus entirely on the grieving mother, his anxiety shifted. She was not performing compassion. She was simply refusing to leave someone alone in the middle of pain. Charles noticed the same thing from only a few feet away. Later, after the reception ended, the king closed the door of a private room and spoke to William without aides present. He told his son that Catherine possessed something no briefing could manufacture: public trust without appearing to demand it. That mattered, because trust could not be ordered by the crown. It had to be felt before any future transition asked the country to accept greater change. That evening, Charles moved from observation to decision. He requested formal options for a direct national address, initially framing the idea as a symbolic message of reassurance. Within days, however, the discussion became larger. The monarch wanted Catherine to speak about continuity and service in a way that placed real responsibility behind the words, not merely ceremony. William understood exactly where the idea had begun. Catherine had never asked for a larger platform. Yet that refusal to seek attention was becoming the reason Charles trusted her with more of it. The decision seemed almost settled. Then one senior royal challenged the entire plan, forcing the question everyone had avoided. Was Catherine still simply supporting the future king, or had she become powerful enough to speak for the institution herself? Royal conflict rarely begins with raised voices. It begins with pauses that last too long, questions phrased too carefully, and people realizing that everyone in the room understands what is really being discussed. When Catherine's proposed state address reached its final planning stage, one private meeting exposed the tension beneath the polished palace surface. What began as a discussion about protocol quickly became something far more personal. A confrontation over relevance, visibility, and the monarchy's future. Camilla looked directly at Catherine and refused to soften the question. Did she understand how a standalone address would be interpreted once the public saw her speaking without William beside her? The Queen Consort was not questioning whether she could handle the speech. She was challenging the precedent, the example a royal action creates for what may happen again in the future. Once Catherine occupied that space alone, the meaning could not easily be pushed back into something smaller. Catherine did not retreat. I understand exactly how it will be interpreted. That is why I cannot treat it lightly. Her answer changed the temperature of the room, because she did not deny the scale of what was happening. She accepted it. For Charles, that mattered, because this was not simply about one successful broadcast. It was about whether the monarchy could begin showing the public a future structure without making that future feel forced. William felt the exchange sharpening and moved forward in his chair. The prince was ready to intervene, but Catherine raised one hand slightly toward him. She wanted no protection in that moment. If her new role carried independent responsibility, then she had to defend the decision independently too. He stopped, watched her carefully, and understood that the woman beside him was already behaving differently under pressure. Camilla pressed further. She argued that the crown depended upon hierarchy as much as affection, and that public popularity should never quietly become constitutional expectation. Hierarchy, in this context, meant the established order of royal rank and responsibility that prevents personal appeal from replacing formal authority. Her concern was clear. Admiration could become expectation, and expectation could eventually reshape power. Charles finally ended the argument. The king placed his pen down and said the broadcast would proceed unchanged. No compromise, no diluted wording. His decision made one point unmistakable. Catherine's expanded position was not being created by headlines, popularity, or accident. It was being deliberately authorized from within the crown. William said little after that, but his silence now carried the greater question. Charles could approve the moment. He could open the door. Yet the future king would have to decide whether Catherine's authority remained temporary protection for the monarchy or became something permanent within their eventual reign. And once that decision became William's to make, the balance inside the royal household was about to shift again. The most consequential royal decisions are often made without cameras, applause, or witnesses. After the confrontation, William faced a choice that was deeply personal and unmistakably constitutional in its symbolism. He could allow Catherine's address to remain a singular moment approved by his father, or he could treat it as something much larger, a declaration of how he intended to share responsibility when his own time came to lead. William understood what was really at stake. The monarchy he might one day inherit would depend not only on confidence in the sovereign, but on trust in the partnership surrounding that sovereign. A royal household, in simple terms, is the working structure of staff, duties, and responsibilities built around senior members of the family. If Catherine was going to stand beside him in the future, then her authority could not always remain hidden behind his position. Catherine heard his hesitation before he fully explained it. Alone after the meeting, The prince admitted that part of him still wanted to protect her from becoming indispensable. He knew what happened to people who became essential to the crown. Their time stopped belonging entirely to them. Their private life became smaller. Every absence was questioned, every decision examined, and every moment of weakness carried public meaning. Then Catherine answered with the clarity that had already unsettled the room earlier. Avoiding responsibility, she told him, would not give them their privacy back. It would simply allow fear to decide what they were willing to become. William studied her for several seconds. He did not rush the answer. Then he said quietly, "Then we do this together." That sentence changed more than the mood. William authorized his household to begin treating Catherine as an independent principal for selected major engagements. An independent principal meant a senior royal whose duties could be planned and carried in their own right, rather than automatically being attached to another person's schedule. For Catherine, it was a subtle administrative change with enormous symbolic weight. William also made one demand about the state address. He wanted her voice preserved. The prince rejected phrases that sounded too ceremonial and removed language that made Catherine seem distant from ordinary people. He wanted her speaking about endurance, family, responsibility, and service in words that sounded like her, not like a document written to survive criticism. Catherine understood why that mattered. If the public trusted the speech, it had to feel lived rather than manufactured. And once the final wording reached senior staff, the palace machinery began to move around that new reality. The change was immediate. Invitations, briefings, and major decisions started reaching Catherine's office in a different order than before. Some doors were opening faster, and other offices were beginning to notice. The broadcast lasts only minutes. Its consequences begin almost immediately. Before Catherine has even left the room, phones are vibrating across royal offices. Diplomatic desks are requesting transcripts, and staff members are trying to understand whether they have just witnessed a beautiful ceremonial gesture or the beginning of a permanent redistribution of royal influence. Inside the palace, however, one reaction says more than any official briefing ever could. Catherine's words are already moving faster than anyone expected. Her promise to carry responsibility is taken as confirmation that her office will now receive greater involvement in major national and Commonwealth engagements. Commonwealth engagements are official duties connected to countries that maintain historic ties through the Commonwealth, giving them enormous symbolic importance for the monarchy. Within minutes, selected briefing papers begin moving toward her team, instead of waiting for William's schedule. Camilla feels the change in the most personal way. After watching the address, she returns to her private sitting room, expecting silence. Instead, an aide arrives with an updated engagement file showing Catherine listed first for a forthcoming national service initiative. The Queen Consort reads the page once, then again. She removes her glasses but says nothing. The stillness is more revealing than anger, because the new order is no longer theoretical. It is appearing in schedules. Catherine feels something entirely different. Rather than celebrating, she turns to William and asks whether she sounded too certain. The question catches the prince off guard. The woman now being described as a symbol of stability is questioning every sentence she has just delivered. He reminds her that certainty was never the point. She was asked to sound responsible, not invulnerable, and that distinction matters, because the public had responded to her humanity as much as her authority. Charles sends a message before the noise grows louder. The king writes only a few lines by hand, telling Catherine that authority is strongest when the person carrying it remembers whom it exists to serve. She reads the note twice. For her, the words carry more weight than any headline, because they confirm that the responsibility given to her was never meant as personal elevation. It was meant as service. William soon receives another shock. International broadcasters are already describing Catherine not simply as the Princess of Wales, but as the clearest symbol of the monarchy's next era. The future king understands the danger and promise in that language. Public confidence can strengthen the crown, but it can also create expectations nobody can easily contain. Catherine barely has time to process any of it. Before the headlines reach her, Charles asks to see her alone. And away from advisors, schedules, and strategy, the king is about to explain why she was placed before the nation in the first place. After all the planning, protocol, and tension, the turning point comes without an audience. Charles and Catherine meet privately, with no aides taking notes and no advisors shaping the conversation. For the first time that evening, there is nothing ceremonial between them. The king is no longer speaking to a royal colleague preparing for an engagement. He is speaking to the woman who may one day stand beside his son when the full weight of the crown becomes theirs. Charles does not begin with praise. He tells Catherine that the address was never designed only to calm the country for one evening. The monarch wanted the public to become familiar with continuity before change ever became unavoidable. Continuity, in this sense, means allowing people to recognize and trust the next generation of royal leadership before succession forces that generation fully into place. For him, that trust cannot be manufactured at the last moment. Catherine listens carefully, then admits what has been troubling her since the speech ended. She feared the address might look presumptuous, as though she had stepped into a space that was not yet hers to occupy. Charles answers without hesitation. Her reluctance, he says, is exactly what convinced him she was ready. People who chase authority often misunderstand its cost, while those who fear its weight are more likely to carry it carefully. Charles then allows the conversation to become personal. He acknowledges what Catherine and William have already surrendered to royal duty: privacy, ordinary family moments, and the freedom to make mistakes without public judgment. The king knows his son has tried to protect his wife from that pressure, and he knows she has repeatedly accepted it anyway. Catherine grows emotional, but does not interrupt. For once, the sacrifice is being named, rather than quietly expected. Then comes the confirmation she had not fully expected. Charles tells her that the address was a genuine turning point. Catherine will continue receiving selected responsibilities in her own right, not simply through William's position. The decision does not separate her from the prince. It does the opposite. It prepares them to carry future responsibility as two people trusted individually and together. Catherine finally asks what he expects from her now. The king gives an answer far simpler than any formal briefing. He tells her the crown does not need another imitation of someone who came before. It needs her to remain recognizable as herself when pressure is greatest, because that is the quality people have already begun trusting. Catherine leaves the conversation with no remaining doubt about what the palace intended. But the palace can only decide responsibility. It cannot decide public belief. And as midnight approaches, the private meaning of her address collides with the public reaction, producing one image that will define the entire night. By the time Catherine's address ends, the story no longer belongs to Buckingham Palace. It belongs to television studios, newspaper editors, crowds gathering behind barriers, and millions of viewers replaying the same sentences for clues about what comes next. Yet among thousands of headlines and endless commentary, one simple public moment captures the emotional force of the evening better than any expert analysis. Strangers standing outside the palace, applauding a woman who cannot hear them. William watches part of that reaction beside Catherine, and the scale of it becomes uncomfortable almost immediately. Broadcasters across Britain break into extended discussion about the meaning of her speaking alone in a state-style address, a formal national message carrying the weight of royal authority. Commentators begin describing the moment as a sign that the next generation is no longer waiting quietly in the background. The prince listens until the conversation turns toward the sacrifices his wife has made. Then he lowers the volume. Catherine notices. She does not ask him to turn it back up. Messages are already reaching her from people thanking her for speaking about endurance, responsibility, and service. Some describe their own losses. Others say her words gave them comfort during difficult moments. The princess becomes quieter with every message, because the reaction is no longer about royal approval. Strangers are attaching their own grief, fear, and hope to something she said. Outside Buckingham Palace, the response takes on a life of its own. A small evening crowd grows behind the barriers as people continue arriving after the broadcast. One woman raises a handwritten sign carrying 5 simple words. "Thank you, Catherine. We heard you." When the palace lights remain visible beyond the gates, applause begins without warning. It spreads through the group until strangers are clapping together for someone who cannot hear them. William hears about that moment through an aide and looks toward Catherine without immediately telling her. He understands why it matters. Public affection has always surrounded royal figures, but this feels different because it has formed around responsibility rather than celebration. The future king knows that kind of trust can strengthen the crown, but it can also place a crushing expectation on the person receiving it. Catherine sees the next morning's front pages soon afterward. One fictional paper places her photograph beneath the stark headline, "Her Moment." Another declares, "The future speaks." She stares at them without smiling. The applause is enormous. The headlines are historic, but neither can deliver the final verdict. That judgment will come from what remains after the excitement disappears, and by then, one truth will be impossible to reverse. Catherine entered that room as a senior royal and emerged carrying something far heavier. History does not always announce itself with a crown, a throne, or a constitutional ceremony. Sometimes it arrives through a voice steady enough to carry uncertainty for everyone listening. Catherine's first official state address mattered, because it revealed something the monarchy had spent years preparing, but never stated so clearly. The next chapter of royal life would not be built around William alone. Catherine had become part of the institution's emotional center, and everyone involved now understood it. Catherine returned to William after the noise had finally begun to fade. The prince looked at her differently now, not because the woman beside him had changed overnight, but because the world had finally seen what he had known privately for years. She had carried a national message, without hiding behind his position. That mattered, because a future queen is not simply a title beside a king. It is a public role, capable of strengthening confidence in the crown when uncertainty threatens to weaken it. William asked the simplest question of the entire evening. "How do you feel?" Catherine paused, let the tension fall from her shoulders, and answered, "Tired, but certain." For the first time all night, they both laughed. The moment was small, almost painfully normal, yet that was exactly why it mattered. Behind the authority, expectation, and historic language were two people realizing that the future they had discussed in private was no longer distant. Charles felt something quieter the following morning. When the king received his briefing and saw Catherine's photograph dominating the front page, he did not celebrate the headlines. He paused, studied the page, and told an aide, "She carried it well." His relief revealed the purpose behind everything. Continuity. The steady transfer of public trust from one royal generation to the next had stopped being an abstract idea. It had become visible. Camilla understood that the balance had shifted too. The queen consort knew Catherine had not replaced anyone. Yet another unmistakable center of public confidence now existed inside the monarchy. Every office, schedule, and future decision would have to recognize that reality. She could question the speed of the change, but she could no longer question whether the change had happened. Catherine's greatest achievement, however, was not the authority she received, it was how she carried it. She never presented herself as more powerful than before. She made duty appear heavier, sacrifice more real, and service more important than status. The speech had begun with uncertainty and ended with clarity. Charles had chosen continuity. William had chosen partnership. Catherine had chosen responsibility. And when she stepped away from that historic address, the monarchy had not simply introduced a stronger Princess of Wales. It had revealed the woman it believed could help carry its future. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.